Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound, joined today by Kat Shoulders, head of content at Worn and Wound. Kat, how's it going?
It's going great. You're probably hearing my voice a little bit, but I'm a little hoarse today from the 3-day Windup Watch Fair in Chicago.
Yeah, we've all got that kind of like post-Windup sort of like slowly re-entering the world thing happening. It's always very quiet on the Worn and Wound team Slack the day after everyone gets back from Windup. It's tiring. But yeah, as you mentioned, we just completed Windup Chicago, the 2025 version. This is the third show of the year. We've got one more to go. Hard to believe we're almost at the end of this year's.
Absolutely insane. Yeah,
completely insane. We're going to talk a little bit about our just like, kind of like our basic sort of like impressions of Windup Chicago, and then later in the episode, we recorded a live recording of the podcast, sponsored by Citizen, with some folks from Citizen and members of that community based around the Aqualand Dive Watch, the 40th anniversary of that one. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Before we get to any of that, Kat, what are you wearing today on your wrist?
Yeah, so today I've got on my Citizen. I actually got one of the Huckberry ProMaster Tough Watches that our editor Meg covered maybe like a month or so ago. Incredible lume, eco drive, like just a really fun field watch, I think, from Citizen. Great size, and I don't know. The numerals on it are sort of like overly big, and they're all loomed, and I'm just like a sucker for like a watch with good lume. And this came in around like $500 or less, and looks absolutely phenomenal, like on a NATO strap. So that's what I'm wearing today.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing a Citizen watch today. I needed a little bit of a palate cleanser coming back from once I wore a watch that I didn't bring to the show. I'm wearing my Archanaut 4-day dial today. It's a kind of like a fun summer watch. I've got it on the white rubber strap today. It's like going to be very hot here in
it's hot,
New Hampshire this afternoon. So yeah, it felt like a good opportunity to kind of like just I don't know. This is it's a bright, colorful watch to kind of just ease back in to the
you got back yesterday morning?
I got back it was like by the time I actually got back to like Concord, New Hampshire, it was like late afternoon. So
okay.
So yeah, I mean the travel is always sort of like an interesting kind of like side discussion of all of our Windup events, but I had a relatively early flight out of Chicago, and then got back to Boston in the early afternoon, and then fought Boston traffic all the way back to New Hampshire. Finally returned home. I know you drove from Chicago from Nashville to Chicago, and then Chicago back to Nashville. Rest of the team, they got caught in some stormy weather, and I think had to spend some time at the airport waiting around.
Yeah, I think they were delayed 5 or 6 hours in Chicago, and I believe there was some really, really bad weather in New York, and flights were grounded, so nothing was really coming in or out. It was strangely, they were all supposed to leave around like 2 p.m. and I beat them home, and I had like an 8-hour road trip. I beat them all. So
I woke up this morning and got on Instagram and saw all sorts of reels of like subways flooding and lots of flooding in New Jersey and the kind of like the tri-state area. So yeah, we got it too here in New Hampshire and in Boston. I just was able to fly back before it really impacted travel. So lucky me, I guess. But
this is my this was my third year driving. We've done Chicago 4 years in a row now, and this is my third year actually driving. And every single year I drive, I hit storms at some point during the road trip, and this year it was sort of going through Indiana both ways, and then coming back last night also hitting some storms. But it's just kind of like summer thunderstorm pop-up stuff. Can't really predict it or plan for it, and
everyone complains about the weather, but no one does anything about it.
What are we going to do?
What I always like to say.
You got to take it slow and just be careful. But it made the drive more interesting because it's like, here's something different. You
have to stay alert. Like it kind of forces you to stay like really focused. It's almost like playing a video game. Like you just have to like really like hone in. On, make sure your reaction time is on point. Yeah, it's a real challenge. But anyway, everyone's back. Safe and
Everyone's back
sound. Glad to
safe,
hear
yeah.
that, even after the delays, everyone's back and in
Yeah.
good shape. Um, I know we're all just kind of like easing back in. I think
Mhm.
that's fine. Kat, what were your kind of like overall impressions of the Chicago Windup Fair in 2025?
Yeah, I was actually speaking with a couple of folks on Instagram this morning that couldn't make it, and they were asking me the same thing, and I really think that, granted, I don't know numbers, I don't know, we haven't had any reports on how many people came through the doors over the weekend, but it did feel like probably the busiest Chicago that I've experienced. A lot of new people, a lot of first timers, and was incredibly busy all 3 days, including Sunday, which is kind of like the chill day a lot of
Hmm.
times. And Sunday was just jam packed and very full, and which was awesome to see that the show has just grown in the city. And we love Chicago. It's hard to have like a favorite. They're all so fun.
Yeah,
And there's a different vibe in the city, but a lot of families this year. I saw a lot of women too, which was great. Just to see a huge diversity of people, I think coming through the doors is always what we really want, and definitely saw that this year. And yeah, had some great conversations with people. A lot of people. I think Chicago almost maybe more than any other city is a city where like people really drive up or they
sure.
fly in. I mean, just talking to people and where they were from. I mean, I met people that were from Nashville even, and it's just kind of crazy to see people come from so far away. It's always kind of shocking to me, and really awesome that they want to attend the show.
Yeah, no, that's definitely that feels like a thing in the Midwest. Like people come from all over. I think people are more willing to kind of like drive to an event
Yeah.
like this. I always try to like I ask people where they're from and just kind of like clock the the distances that people travel. But yeah, I talked to folks who came in from California, who came in from
Yeah, all
I also
over.
talked to people who came in from Tennessee
Yeah.
for the show, Texas,
Yeah.
Missouri, Michigan, which is obviously a neighboring state, but like yeah, people really like they're willing to get on the road
Yeah.
in the middle
Or
part of the
fly.
country.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
fly
and
in too. Yeah.
they like they're willing to come to an event like this. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I agree. It was a really it was packed.
Yeah, it was really
Especially like
packed. Yeah.
Saturday, you had that feeling at times where like it's as full as it can get. Like you're just kind of like
Yeah.
wall to wall people,
Yeah.
which was it's exciting to like be in a room with that many
Yeah.
people who are excited about watches. It's if you're you can get a little claustrophobic like me. It's also
Yeah.
like not
Yeah.
sometimes you have to like take a step back and like get some air, but it
Yeah.
was yeah, it's exciting. It's good to see people come out and be enthusiastic about watches, and particularly with like the roster of brands at the show. There were a lot of
Mhm.
like kind of like really small brands and brands that were like new
Yeah.
to wind up, and it was nice to see them be so well received at the show, I
Yeah,
thought.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a great show, really success, and a lot of new brands there as well this year, which is really cool to see, and probably a really good show, I think, for like a new brand to experience the Wind Up Fair rather than like jumping into something like New York as your first time, because that can be a little bit daunting, I think, and just on a whole nother scale and level. Um, but no, really great fun, and lot of cool things. I just want to shout out like the Belova snorkel watch. So many people
Hmm.
bought. We've got like a little gift box set. You get a nomadic sling with it. It has a Chicago bean on it, which is so much fun. The dial is almost like a mirror. They really hit that one out of the park. It was definitely a crowd favorite at the fair, among the new Citizen ProMaster too, which I saw a lot of
Yeah.
during the show. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's a good segue to talk about the next segment of this podcast, which is
yeah,
a sort of like a panel discussion that I had with folks about the 40th anniversary of the Aqualand Citizens. I think like probably like most iconic, that certainly strangest
yeah,
like dive watch creation. There's a new limited edition Aqualand. We can leave notes in the show notes to our article about that, but I was joined by Neil Brick from Citizen, Ben Lowry of the Submersible Wrist Instagram account, and also Watches of Espionage, and Justin Souders, who's a very talented artist
yeah,
who painted just like a very cool kind of like portrait. A very evocative portrait of the Citizen
yeah.
Aqualand for its 40th anniversary. So we had a really fun conversation about sort of like the history of the watch and diving with watches and the history of diving with watches.
Yeah.
Ben is like such a wealth of information on
Oh my gosh, yeah.
like dive watch history, and like he just like really knows his stuff. I feel like he could, like, we barely scratched the surface.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I sat in on that panel and I kept kind of thinking like, oh, we could easily keep talking for another hour about stuff in here. Really exciting. And I'll also say for listeners, later in the episode, there's some sneak peeks at some things to come, maybe from Citizen too, that Neil shares with us. So really exciting stuff. I'm surely very excited to see what's in their back pocket for later this year or maybe next year, as they celebrate some more anniversaries. Really exciting stuff.
Yeah, no, it was a really fun discussion. Those guys really know their citizens, really know their dive watches. They also, of course, discuss the most recent iteration of Wind Up in a Lake, which we did again this year. This podcast was recorded like the day after that event, which went successfully once again. So we got a little report on that. It's a really fun conversation. So I guess we'll kick to that. And any final words on Wind Up Chicago, Kat?
I can't wait to come back next year. Yeah. Very exciting.
Same. It's always a lot of fun. It's nice to get an Italian beef sandwich. I'll write a whole article on
oh my gosh, that's another note. Like every meal I had was great in Chicago.
Yeah.
Did not
every
have a bad
meal is just like tons of meat. It's just a lot of not a place, not a city you go to get a nice light refreshing meal.
I think it did get to be like driving home yesterday, my stomach was just like, you ate a lot of meat over the weekend. Yeah.
Yes.
Affected me a little bit.
Same. I think we all did. That's part of why it's a slow.
It's detox. No, it's just detox time. It's fine. Just eat some vegetables now this week.
Well, thanks, Kat, for coming on to just quickly discuss Wind Up Chicago, and thanks of course to everyone at Citizen for sponsoring the panel over the weekend, and for being a great lead sponsor as always for the Wind Up Watch Fair. And we'll kick it over to that recording right now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live recording of the Worn and Wound podcast from the Wind Up Watch Fair Chicago. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound. This is a podcast all about the Citizen Aqualand, which celebrates its 40th anniversary this year. So we have a panel of guests who are here to talk about the Aqualand, and from a variety of different angles. So I'd love to introduce them to you today. We've got Neil Brick, a veteran of this very podcast. He's the director of merchandising at Citizen. Is that your?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. Welcome back, Neil. It's great to see you again.
Glad to be back.
We've also got Ben Lowry, who runs the Submersible Wrist Instagram account, is kind of an expert on all things dive watches, dive history, making his Worn Around podcast debut. Thank you for being here, Ben. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And then at the end of the panel here, we've got Justin Souders, who's an artist, sitting next to his wonderful painting of a Citizen Aqualand. We're going to be talking to Justin about sort of like the aesthetic impressions, I think, and the inspiration to him as an artist of the Citizen Aqualand, and perhaps some other watches as well. Justin, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So this is the Worn and Wound podcast. We always start with a wrist check. Justin, we'll start with you. What do you got on the wrist today?
I have the Citizen Aqualand 40th anniversary on.
Very nice. I was checking that out earlier in the show. Fantastic piece. A worthy addition to the collection to celebrate the anniversary of the Citizen Aqualand. Ben, how about you? What are you wearing today?
I'm wearing a newer Citizen. This is the 40th anniversary Aqualand.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Another Citizen Aqualand. Fantastic. It looks great on you.
I appreciate it,
by the way. Yeah. Neil, how about you? What are you wearing today?
I think, to no one's surprise, I too am also wearing the 40th anniversary.
Oh my goodness.
Aqualand.
Wow. Did you guys plan this?
We did not.
Just happened to all be wearing the same exact watch. Listen, it looks great on all you guys. It's really fun to see such an unusual dive watch on three wrists all in the same place. It's great. I'm also wearing a Citizen. It's not an Aqualand, so I'll be the odd man out here. I'm wearing a Citizen ProMaster of some kind with a loom diver. I bought this watch from you, Neil, like 3 years ago. Now, basically right off your wrist. I love it. I wear it all the time. It's just
Good. It's a Fugu.
Fugu, yes. Just a fantastic tool watch. It's always fun to see that dial kind of like, loom up in the bright light. It's great. Okay, so Citizen Aqualand, 40 years of this incredibly strange watch. Neil, we'll start with you. Give us a little bit of sort of like the broad outlines of the history of this watch. Like, what is the Aqualand? If you have to kind of like explain it to someone who's never seen it before.
Yeah, I mean, from a merchandising point of view, the Aqualand came out in 1985, and it was kind of like one of the last and first dive watches built for divers that were kind of competing with dive computers at the time. Dive computers were about to really take off late 80s, early 90s, and this was Citizen's attempt to kind of keep it in the watch world with a depth sensor already on the watch and have an analog digital display to kind of partake in the dive computer-esque look and feel while still relatively having that dive watch aesthetic. What I think is really cool is it's been 40 years, and if you look at one that was made in 1985, you almost couldn't really tell the difference.
Yeah.
There's not many products, I think, in the world that aren't changed in 40 years. They're really true iconic in terms of a consumer product looks like.
Yeah, there's a small handful of watches that are very that really haven't like changed their their shape or size or general aesthetic too much, and the Aqualand is certainly in that category. I feel like the Aqualand has sort of like risen in profile in recent years. It's kind of like obtained this like new cult status. Has that been your observation as well?
I think so. I think also what kind of helped having the cult status is the U.S. market kind of went away from it for a little bit, and it almost became like a folk hero in a way. So it's really nice to have an actual SKU in the U.S. catalog for this year. It's the anniversary. It's really special. So I'm really proud to have it in here, and I do think it's kind of risen to a little more prominence in the enthusiast community, at least.
Yeah, because for a long time it was one of those things you really had to like seek out. It was very sort of like an inside baseball kind of thing. Ben, you're a diver, Ben, and you're also obviously like very well versed in dive watch history and diving history. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Aqualand from a diver's perspective and what it means to you as someone who like participates in this in this activity on a regular basis, and also maybe tell us a little bit about like your first impressions of the Aqualand the first time you saw it. And if you remember when that was, that would be great.
It's a great question. I think it's a big, badass dive watch. And I think all divers, whether they admit it or don't, secretly want to wear a big hulking watch so that when people walk up to you, you can be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely a diver. Obviously no one cares, but you still want to say that. And you might say it anyway. So for me, it was definitely that. And when I got into dive watches in the early 2000s, it was one of the ones that you would see in old pictures of whatever, Navy SEALs, Navy divers, cool scuba people, wreck divers off the coast of New Jersey or someplace like that would wear this kind of a watch. And so I associated it with that. Dive computers were already, of course, very much a thing, but this felt kind of in between. So you have, it's a cool watch. It has analog functionality, but then you also have enough diving computer type functionality that you could ostensibly use it for quite a bit of diving without needing to reach for a computer, even now, if you wanted to, as we did yesterday.
I want to get to that. Actually, maybe now's a good time to talk about the dive trip yesterday. So I think this is the third year in a row we've done a Windup dive trip. Fourth year, yeah. Tell us a little bit about the dive experience yesterday.
It was awesome. I mean, like any good Midwestern dive boat, it had some boat issues. We had kind of like there was a sassy engine or whatever. I mean, these guys are nodding their heads, but there was some kind of an engine problem, so we didn't do the original plan, and then it was like, what if we did a deeper dive? And it was like, well, actually, the guys didn't bring the right gear for the deeper dive, and there's some back and forth for that, which basically just meant we all got to hang out and play with the watches for longer before we actually got in the water, which is not a problem. And when we finally did get in the water, it was a 35-foot dive, wreck of the Tacoma, which is a tug. Somebody remember how long it was? Pretty big. 75-foot tug, and it's in decent shape on the bottom, and the visibility happened to be great. So for anyone getting pictures like Brock over there, I mean, awesome dive, ton of fun, and a great place to take a watch that was made to do something in a very serious way in 1985 and then use it again in 2025 when there's all these other options for how to track your dive, and it works just as well. So it's kind of cool.
Have you dove with the Aqualand prior to this dive experience yesterday?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yes, I own a bunch of them.
So is it what's special about the watch? Like from a why would you choose the Aqualand for a dive, like as opposed to like a more traditional dive watch?
I would say a lot of why we like watches comes down to the stories behind them. And for me, the associations between the Aqualand and the military community and a bunch of cool spec ops units and commercial diving, all these different diving communities. The watch almost became just kind of like that 80s tough guy, cool action person watch. So I think that heritage makes it interesting. And then on top of that, it is a good tool that actually gets a job done. So that, for me, that's the combo. And of course, like it's cool to go dive with a Rolex or an Omega or whatever. But there's like that everyman aspect to a Citizen, and especially the Aqualand, where any regular diver now or then could, aspire to own one and get one.
Yeah, it's a very like accessible watch in terms of its, like its price point, obviously, and I think that for folks of like roughly our generation, I think we're all like roughly pretty close in age. Like it definitely has a nostalgic pull for that,
100%.
kind of like the '80s sort of like Anna Digi thing. Thinking about the aesthetics, Justin, let's throw it to you. Tell us a little bit about this painting that's next to you. This very kind of like avant-garde, impressionistic painting of the Aqualand. It's quite beautiful. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about your artistic process and sort of like what your sort of like philosophy is on approaching watches as art, because you've been at this for a little while. You've been painting watches for some time. So if you could tell us a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Oh, yeah, thank you. This was a very fun piece to do. I've had the good fortune to work with Citizen for several years now and paint several of their pieces. My background with art is high school I went to was art was half of the day. It's actual studio art classes for that. And then when I went into college, that's where I actually started painting and really fell in love with the abstract expressionist paintings, like American 1940s, 50s painters, and a big inspiration with a lot of my abstracts. That's what I originally started doing was abstract paintings. Was driving around our town where the billboards that they would have lining the roads, I don't know if it was just bad glue, bad paper, whatever the process was, but there would just be billboards peeling off, and you would see 5 or 6 different billboards underneath it, like all the colors and the peeling off of it. And I was like, that should be a painting. So I have this stacks and stacks of photos. So I would just pull over on the side of the road, and I always had a camera with me and take photos of these billboards, just putting it in my pocket to like, oh, this is if I don't need some inspiration on something, need something to paint, would do that. So that's where a lot of the aspects of the background coming through the painting and feeling like something's been like paper's been ripped off or other images and revealing that is kind of what I've done with that. And I think like I do a lot with like the tape line on the bottom. Like once I get that first layer of the background, I'll lay down a strip of tape, paint it, and peel it off at the end to kind of show a little bit of that history of the painting and like where it was coming from. And just a big fan of texture and patina. So I have a lot of 3D elements to the painting on the canvas where it's put on before the painting is done to really give it that little that depth and pop to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I love the texture in this painting. I was looking at it, kind of like close up the other day, and I encourage everyone here, if you have a chance, to kind of like go right up to it and just you can like really see like the labor that's put into the painting. How long does it take you to complete something like this?
30 minutes. No, it's several weeks.
Yeah.
Usually I can say if usually about 6 weeks is the fastest I can do a piece. Yeah. And I have multiple pieces going down. It's oil painting, so it takes a while to dry, and especially with my process and the layers on it, it's an advantage and a disadvantage to do oil painting because you can paint on it, leave it, come back a few days later, it's still wet, so I can still like mix things and move things around. But then if I'm really wanting to put another like drastic layer on it and I don't want those colors to mix or combine, I have to wait until that's completely dry. And that's where I'll be cycling through multiple pieces at a time.
Yeah, it's very cool. A question for all of you. I'm wondering if kind of like thinking about the Aqualand 40 years in, you guys are all wearing one. You've had a chance to kind of like walk around the show, I think, and like see other watches of all different types. I'm wondering if you feel like there's anything like misunderstood or not well understood about the Aqualand at this point. Like how does this watch sort of like defy expectations? If you could think about that.
I think on paper it looks really scary. Dimensions are kind of wonky and weird, especially if you include the depth sensor or not.
Yeah.
As is with a lot of Citizen watches, I think a lot of Citizen watches on paper look kind of scary, and they wear much better on wrist. So I encourage anyone to try anything on even any brand, because it always matters how it wears on the wrist. But I think the Aqualand itself is interesting because it's one of those watches where maybe you don't want to wear it if you're not a true diver, which I kind of get. It's got a big funky depth sensor and it's made for divers, but there is that kind of cool aesthetic to it, that 80s kind of like action hero that I think we could all, especially if you grew up with those movies, are drawn to. But I'd love to hear what Ben and Justin.
It's just really surprising to me that this watch wasn't in more movies.
Right.
Like this would have been prime like Stallone, Arnie time period.
Totally.
Like why wasn't this in way more movies?
Aqualand is underrated. Yeah. That's what I would say. I mean, I look at old photos and videos of divers in a variety of different settings all the time, because that's what I do for fun. And I see, I don't know, 100x more Aqualands than I do Submariners or Seamasters, or on the people that are actually doing the things.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, underrated just kind of in general. And I guess affordability is part of that, because watch enthusiasts tend to like expensive stuff.
Sure.
And I get that. But there's really only two camps of people you're going to find wearing an Aqualand out in the world. And it's people like us, or it's some kind of interesting diving adventure person.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Wait, we're not interesting?
What's that?
We're not interesting?
You're interesting, Justin. You're a painter.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, looking back through like historic photographs of, of divers, you see a lot of them wearing the Aqualand. Is there a particular time period where that's most noticeable? Like, is it, obviously we've got 40 years of history here. Is it something that like runs across that entire span, or was there like a period that was like kind of like peak Aqualand at one point?
In terms of the photos, I would say the 80s and the 90s. So if you want to see Navy divers or SEALs or Special Forces or people like that wearing Aqualands, I think in 85, people were kind of doing that transition where they had grown up with analog watches. They started their service with analog watches. You get the G-Shock in 1983, which obviously changes everything. But I think some of the people, old school is always cool, it always has been. So the old salty guys would stick to something that felt more analog, even though it had some digital functionality, over making the bigger jump to a plastic resin case watch, which is a G-Shock. No shade on G-Shock, big G-Shock fan, but I think it's a little easier for those people to grasp. That was kind of the heyday, but I still see them today. So
yeah, I mean the whole like the 80s-ness of it is like I think so key to it. And like Neil, you obviously like you deal with a lot of watches, in your work with Citizen. Is that like sort of like retro things like that runs through the entire collection, or aspects of it anyway, right?
Of the Aqualand collection?
Well, of interest in watches in general. I feel like there's like
I mean, 80s are definitely having a moment. I think everything's very cyclical. I think, as you know, integrated sport watches are having a moment, and that'll start to kind of die down in favor of maybe more 80s and 90s centric. Just a little bit of a slight preview. We spoke about 80s. Next year's 50th anniversary of Ego Drive. We have something very 80s coming out next year, which I'm very excited about. So that is definitely in tune with kind of where we're seeing trends are going, and I don't see why it would stop.
Yeah. Let's talk about Ben. I'd like to hear. I alluded a little bit earlier to the way that this watch is like part of a small group of like extremely identifiable dive watches. Like what dive watches would you compare it to that are like as iconic for their like weirdness? The one that comes to mind for me is the Ploprof, just because it's like a similarly unusual shape, but there's like a lineage of divers that are like very specially built for particular tasks that this watch falls into, right?
Ploprof was going to be mine, so
Yeah.
I'm a little upset that you took it.
I'm sorry about that.
I mean, what I always like to see, or what I would bring up, I think, would be like the early mechanical experimenting with integrated depth gauges.
Yes, yeah.
IWC had some cool ones. Aquadive had some cool ones where there was some kind of pressure sensor and it had an analog readout with an extra hand or whatever. But because that would have just been so incredibly difficult to engineer, especially back in the day before we had quartz movements and circuit boards and digital tech and all that. But those brands were doing it anyway. And I think it is that kind of single-minded focus that the diving community has, and therefore diving community equipment must have, where it's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And the Aqualand is a watch that feels like that.
Yeah. Justin, are you a diver, or are you like me and
A desk diver.
Yeah. So from your perspective as an enthusiast who's like mainly, sticks to dry land, like how do you feel kind of like walking around like wearing this watch, like which is like such a specific like tool focused thing?
Complete poser.
Yeah. Honestly, like that's kind of how I feel sometimes wearing these watches. But they're cool and you still want to like
Definitely. I mean, I definitely gravitate more towards the tool watch. I mean, that's the vast majority of what I have. It's diving is definitely going to be one of those things. It's on my short list, bucket list, and it will happen. And
yeah. Do you guys find that when you wear a watch like this, sort of like out in public, does it like draw? Like, do you get like more questions about your watch when because it's like a very identifiable shape. It's unusual. Maybe it doesn't even like register as a watch to some people right away.
I mean, when I'm out, I get like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll say a little bit about the watch. Oh, that's really cool. I like the coloring or something like that. But the depth gauge really kind of sets it off at a whole different level. So not too much. No, I mean, it's still interesting and I think seeing analog watches in general still. I think you're still seeing a lot of smartwatches out there, so it's nice to see other analog watches, and it's cool to have the conversation when people see an analog watch that they think is interesting.
Yeah. Ben, for your Instagram persona is, obviously, based around kind of like teaching people about, about dive watches. Do you have a chance to kind of like talk about watches like this, like out in the real world, like with the public at any point? Is it easier to do when you're wearing a watch that's like highly specific, like the Aqualand?
Yes. I mean, I would say the number one reason that I have the account is to basically talk to divers, remain connected to divers, and then also have a reason to talk to the dive watch community, which is a bigger subset than people might imagine, who are kind of specifically focused in dive watches and got into watches because of dive watches. So yeah, and I was trying to count how many times I've posted Aqualand photos. I always send them to you, but I mean,
It's true.
Dozens, I guess, and it's because, like as I mentioned earlier, it's not hard. I mean, to find photos of cool people doing cool things wearing Aqualands is pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Let's talk about the 40th anniversary edition specifically. So, Neil, what did Citizen? What were you guys setting out to do with this watch? How are you celebrating the history of the Aqualand with this LE?
So we wanted to do something special with the Aqualand in terms of 40th anniversary, but we didn't have a new movement to do it quite yet. We are working on something in EcoDrive, because as you know, this is still quartz, which is kind of like the antithesis to what we're all about with EcoDrive, but it's still in the line. And so we wanted to release the identical watch, but in a colorway that paid tribute to, I think, one of the most famous colorways, the black and gold kind of two-tone. I think this does a really good job of it. It's this really beautiful kind of soft gray IP. That counterbalances with the gold bezel and gold pushers, and I think it really works well, and it really gives that really cool 80s vibe.
Yeah. For Ben and Justin, how does this new watch kind of like compare in your view to like previous Aqualands? Ben, you said you've honed a bunch of these, over time. What's how do you see like the design evolution of this watch? Obviously, there's little incremental changes, but What are your sort of like takeaways there?
One thing I really like about the Aqualand is that the design changes were oftentimes kind of crazy. Like they go from the original analog digital Aqualand in '85. When did the analog one come out? '95, something like that?
Around there, yeah.
Mid '90s, you get the analog one, which has 6 hands, I think. Yeah. So it basically gives you all the same info that you get from this in a way that is almost impossible to understand, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
I wore one of those yesterday, and there's been subsequent ones in the early 2000s and since. Some of them are absolutely nuts. Neil knows exactly what I'm talking about.
There's some big monsters.
52 millimeters and bigger, and I mean like in diameter, not like with the depth gauge, because it is the most wearable big watch maybe ever. But there's been a few that were just absolutely crazy. So to see 40 years later, Citizen value the original enough to circle all the way back is really cool, and it shows respect for the 40 years of history that the thing has. And if they do come up with something new, awesome. But at least they took that step backwards and said, like, all right, let's honor the OG.
Yeah. Justin, is this kind of like the shape of the Aqualand that's most familiar to you, or is there like a previous version that's kind of maybe for you personally like more special?
No, this is the one that's definitely more familiar to me, and it's interesting, the design aspect of it, that there's not one person that's credited with doing the design of the case. It would have been a whole, like, the design team at Citizen at that point. So it was more like they were highly viewed the group versus like an individual contributor to it. And so you had engineers and designers doing something that should have been, it looks like an artist did that to create this thing that's its form and function. But no, I love that they did the gold accents on it, because I'm not a two-tone watch guy by any means. I like them, but I can't pull that off. But to me, it's more like the choice of the gold accents on it. Besides the cover on the depth sensor, it's more like it's showing you where the user interfaces are on it, with it being the bezel, the crown, the pushers, things like that. It's like, okay, these are the things that I'm going to touch, so it's highlighting that. It's like this company, Yakima, that makes like roof racks and bike racks and cars and all this stuff. And so they have this very muted color palette where it's all just black and gray and silver, but everything you're supposed to touch to adjust anything is a bright red. So you know to look out for that. So I see that with this watch. Like everything that's this bright gold that's what I'm going to interact with. It's not so much as like an artistic or visual, like stylized element to it, but more of like, hey, this is where you need to touch this watch.
Does that make it more rewarding to paint? Does it make it rewarding as a subject for your work?
Yeah, I've definitely turned a page recently where gold is my preferred color to paint with on a watch. At first, it was very intimidating to do that, but with gold, you can use, there's so many other colors to get added to that, to get that contrast and to get the highlights and the midtones on that, besides just silver or gray.
Yeah. It's interesting too to hear you say that it feels like a watch like that an artist could have like created, that an artist could have designed. Like to me, like the best watches, like that's how I would describe some of my favorite watches that feel like pure kind of like inspired, design objects, as opposed to objects that are like created in a boardroom. And I feel like that's kind of for better or worse, a lot of watches sort of feel like that, these days. And I think we don't normally associate like hardcore tool watches, especially with like artistic, inspiration. So it's interesting to hear you.
Yeah, it's definitely very 80s, but like you can see in these design aspects of it, like you could picture the DeLorean or like classic like MTV logos of that time period and graphics and things like that. Like you really see that in the shape of the case.
Yeah. Ben, you've talked about the popularity of this watch with with professional and recreational divers over the years. Is it your sense that it was always kind of like well received by the dive community, like from the very beginning? Was there ever any like? I'm always curious how watches sort of like age. In perception with the public over time. Have you seen any other sort of reactions to this watch besides, like the what we now look at as like kind of like reverence with the dive community?
Unfortunately, a lot of divers nowadays don't wear watches because of the aforementioned computers. So what you're really speaking to there is like that subset of divers that also appreciates watches, and there's a bunch of them here, and myself included. And for those people, I think it's really polarizing. Like I think you're either somebody that might buy and wear and appreciate an Aqualand, or you're like, oh, absolutely not. Like that's not happening, because it's the antithesis of a Rolex Submariner or an Omega Seamaster or something. But for me, kind of in the best way, and I think it's okay to appreciate both. But I think it's that like it looks as much tool as it does anything else, and that can be hard for some people.
Does that check out for you, Neil? Like, do you see like a particular type of customer sort of like going for this watch as opposed to like? Yeah. Someone who might be cross-shopping, like a more luxury.
Yeah, I think so. It's a pretty niche watch still, and I think you have to like know about the watch and love the watch. Or I've come across people who, because of this anniversary, have just found the watch. And I know one guy specifically just messaged me on Instagram saying like, I found this watch, I love the watch, I'm going to use it now for my dive certification, and it's going to be like my dive watch for that memory, which is amazing to hear. One thing we haven't also mentioned, I think, which is pretty cool, is the other functionalities of the watch besides being a dive watch. It also has a chronograph, and a dual time, which I think is really interesting. A lot of people love having dual time, and this watch having the digital display allows that to happen. So it's a pretty cool kind of like good travel dive watch as well.
Yeah, no, it definitely has like, it's a modern, like multifunction quartz watch in addition to being like a hardcore like dive tool, which is
Totally.
that's a very cool thing. What do you think Neil, you might have a sense of this like for real, but maybe just like, we could like imagine like a future version of the Aqualand. I'm just curious, like what I'll open this up to the whole panel. Like what would your hopes be for like a next gen Aqualand? Like if we're celebrating the 80th anniversary of the Aqualand, what does that look like?
I know what it looks like in my head, and I've had big conversations with Japan this past year about it and how important the Aqualand name is to Citizen. If you don't know, Citizen doesn't have a lot of names in their archive. Like it's a lot of just Citizen Dive or Citizen ProMaster.
Yeah.
So Aqualand is unique in the fact that it actually has a name and it has a lineage. So I know last year we came out with a new analog digital land watch.
Yep.
Really cool MIP screen with a lot of functionality. I think that's probably the easiest kind of hopeful track. I haven't seen anything yet, but that's, I think, the kind of goal too, is to kind of make a really updated, cool new version of, while still keeping the history of design. But the headquarters in Japan knows how important Aqualand is, and they are working hard on the future.
Yeah. Ben, how about from your perspective? Like as a diver, what would your hopes be for like a next gen Aqualand? What would that look like for you?
Eco Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neil knows. I mean, I think as long as it's aware of its past while moving forward in terms of its technology, you can't miss, kind of. I mean, so hopefully there's some reverence to this K-shape or one of the other Aqualands that is important to people. And then, tech's obviously come a long way. Obviously, I certainly don't want it to be a smartwatch. I think we can all agree on that. But if they can make it do some more stuff and then also not be a battery issue. Because a lot of divers, if they're not serious watch nerds, will use the watch, dive however many hundreds of times, battery dies, it goes in a drawer. Are they going to get another battery? Will they keep it going? And that's one thing I would say about the watch now. That said, I've replaced plenty of batteries. But you know what I mean? I think that'd be an easy box to check.
Yeah. There's something like super convenient, obviously, about a solar powered watch. It just makes it like incredibly easy to reach for. Justin, how about you for like a future Aqualand, like aesthetically, not to put you on the spot, but like, is there something like that you would like change or add, to the watch to, make it even more appealing or maybe more strange in some way? What would you look for in a future version of this watch?
I wouldn't make a ton of changes. I think it would be fun to do titanium again, and bring that back. The Eco Drive definitely, but then for you guys as well, like I don't know how you feel about if you did the Eco Drive. Would you like to see it say that on the dial, the text, just for the heritage of it? Would that be something that?
Yeah, squeeze it in there. We'll ask you how to do it. You do art.
Okay. I don't know if you wanted to do something crazy like the cover for the dive sensor, like make that loom or something like that. Do something
That's
like
actually
with
good.
materials.
The dive sensor is an interesting point because coming from a product point of view, I'm curious, Ben, and from a dive point of view, and Justin from an artistic point of view, how important is an external depth sensor to the design? If it didn't have that but still had the depth sensor internal, would that turn you off, or is that too much of the DNA of Aqualand?
I think it would be a completely different watch then. I don't think it should have carry the Aqualand name. Maybe that is something very signature to that watch.
Even this conversation's making me upset. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know what I mean? Like,
I almost got up and left.
Yeah. I mean, Citizen has tracks, you know what I mean? Like, you can be a Fugu, automatic, whatever, Eco Drive, regular dive guy, or you could be an Aqualand guy.
Totally.
Gotta keep it, I think. I mean, I'm sure you can engineer your way around it now, but I hope you don't.
No, I get it.
I'm not saying you. I know you're not.
No,
I hope you do it. I'll love it if you do it. But.
It kind of reminded me of how there was a little bit of a controversial take when Pelagos went to 39 and 200 meters versus 500, and there was like, can Pelagos be a normal sport watch versus this hardcore dive watch? So
I think anyone that's been deeper than 200 meters can get mad about it, and that everybody else should chill. And same for the Aqualand. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
I think the capabilities are going to be there regardless, and I think like depth rating is silly. I mean, if you make a 1,000-meter Aqualand, I'll think it's badass and I'll buy one. But But you won't have actually changed the group of people who can use it.
Totally.
So 1,000-meter Aqualand coming soon,
coming
right?
soon, yeah.
It's good to hear.
Heard it here first.
What is you're on tape, you know?
Yeah. Well, we do have 1,000-meter dive watch in the line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's glad we have you on record for that. Just a couple more questions for you guys. I'm curious, like, what does it mean to you, like personally and professionally, for each of you, that this watch has hit the 40-year mark and that it's like something that we're celebrating? I think that, if the Aqualand had turned 40, like 10 years ago, that it would arrive in a very different sort of like watch environment. So I feel like we're kind of like lucky to be like celebrating it now when, there's a real interest in this type of like niche watch. So maybe we can just like go down the line and talk about like why it's important to each of you.
The Aqualand's important to me because it kind of is one of the first watches I found out about in my enthusiast journey. And when I started Citizen, it was one of my goals to figure out why it wasn't in the line and to get it in the line. Mm-hmm. And it's taken almost 3.5 years, but I feel like it's finally here, and I'm very proud of that. So it's a cool milestone in my Citizen career.
Yeah. Ben, how about for you?
I think the Aqualand is proof that a modern watch that was not born in the 1950s can be an icon in the dive watch arena. Almost every other dive watch has roots dating back, whether they're way back or whatever. It's the 1950s, it's the 1960s. So it's proof that they were still making awesome things that matter. And as people get older and that era has kind of come around, because old school is cool, it's getting a second life almost, and it's really awesome to see. The idea that you could be like a 20-year-old hipster and live in Wicker Park and covet an Aqualand is awesome. Instead of, it has to be a Submariner, Omega, Seamaster, whatever. Sure.
How about for you, Justin? What does 40 years of the Aqualand mean to you?
Just that the history of the design and the history of the watch to really bring that back and bring it into another crowd. I think too, it's with the Aqualand, for me, it really, like the Ploprof being mentioned before, like it really scratches that asymmetrical like case itch that we have, and I love that every aspect of the 40th and what they did with it and how they brought it back. It is I'm declaring it the watch of summer. I'm set up last night shopping for straps with gold hardware, and it's.
Yeah, we can declare it the watch of the summer right now if you guys want. I think that's totally fine. Yeah. I'd love to open it up to questions. We have a pretty full room here in our Chicago podcast /panel room. Do we have any questions from the audience? This is your chance. Oh, there's one right there in the back.
Hi, my name is Kevin. I have a question. I have two questions, actually. One, I think, would be maybe in Ben's area. I'm at the Giant Mouse booth, and we have a designer in from Denmark, and he looked at my watch and said, "Oh, that's my king's watch, the Pengo. When he was a prince, he was in the SAS." I wonder if you could elaborate on that history at all. And then for Neil, it's a large run, but it's a unique number. I wondered how you guys came to the run of the 40th anniversary. Thank you.
I'll do that one first. It's not as romantic as you'd think it would be. Each market kind of tells HQ how much they want, and then once that number's decided, it's there. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's kind of how it is.
I'll jump in for Pingo. I've posted that dude. The King. I've posted the King several times. Frederick 10 is his name. I think last year he actually officially became the King. He served in the Danish Frogman Corps, which is their loose Navy SEAL equivalent back in the day. And of course, that's one of those like, oh yeah, the King's here. I wonder if he got the real, allegedly he got the real training and all that. And at the time, and actually still today, they issue the Aqualand. So they issued the C022 and C023 back in the day. And then now it's the JP 2008E, I think. Maybe you signed these orders? I don't know. How does this work?
Not personally. But.
Well, but anyway, they're still out there in that community. So Denmark has this really weird, like, niche affinity for the watch, and if you run into any Danish person, they'll tell you exactly that, because it's like a thing. And I think whenever they show pictures of the King, they love the King, and when they show pictures of the young King in his like military getup, there's a couple iconic shots of him wearing the watch. So yeah, it's kind of a cool niche appeal.
Thanks for the question. Anyone else have questions for our panelists on the Aqualand? Yeah, there's one.
Yeah, this is a question for Ben. What's the coolest picture you've come across with someone wearing an Aqualand throughout your travels through the watch industry?
There's a bunch. Just to highlight a couple of communities that I would also associate with the Aqualand, the Royal Australian Navy has issued them for a long time to their clearance diving community, which are essentially EOD divers. So if you're looking for Aqualand pictures, that's a great place to look. But one of my favorite pictures is from the U.S. Air Force pararescue community. And it's a couple of guys getting ready to like do some parachuting or whatever. And like one guy's like holding the other guy's harness or ostensibly checking something. And he's like just the archetypal 80s action movie looking dude. I'll send this to Neil and he can post it or something. But, you know, big, strong, a humongous mustache, much better than my mustache. Big dude, cool gear, 80s woodland camo, and Aqualand on the rubber strap, which is 10 out of 10. It's the way to do it.
Great. Any other questions?
I can ask one more question. And this might be for Neil. Without the no decompression limits traditional strap, what was the design idea of doing it without that?
Yeah, so the ND Limit strap has been out of the catalog for a few years now. I wasn't part of that decision, but it sounds like they didn't want to partner with the licensing anymore, which is unfortunate. Maybe they would have brought it back for this watch. We weren't involved in that conversation, but it's a cool relic now when you do find watches with them. So I think it's kind of a cool ode and a little Easter egg now. But maybe in the future we'll get back on that.
Do we have any other questions? Any other hands up for our panelists? Any final thoughts, guys, on the Aqualand?
Just one final thought. I know only for people in the room, but anyone who does purchase the Aqualand here at the show is entered to win a raffle to win the painting, which is pretty amazing. So if you haven't purchased the Aqualand or you'd like to be interested, come over and talk to me at the booth and we can answer any questions. But it's pretty awesome to be able to have a possibility to get the painting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, the painting's really, it's very cool. Again, I highly encourage you folks to take a look at it up close and follow Justin on Instagram and Ben on Instagram and Neil too. Neil is a fantastic photographer who we should all be following on Instagram. I'll make sure that there are links to all of your accounts in our show notes when this goes live. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming on the podcast to talk about Aqualand at the end of Windup Watch Fair Chicago. This has been a really fun conversation about a truly iconic watch. So thank you, all three of you, for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to everyone here for joining us for this live recording of the podcast. We appreciate it and hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks.